folks, it's Steve with Prima Coffee here. Today I've got a whole selection of grinders right in front of me because we're going to talk a little bit about selecting a Burr grinder and what kind of goes into that decision-making process in terms of features you want to look for, price point, all that stuff rolled into getting you the best grinder for what you need it for. So I have a selection of grinders here that basically run the consumer level price point as far as our consumers are generally concerned. We have down here at the lowest budget level an under $50 hand grinder, all the way up to an $875 electric espresso grinder. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Burr grinders, we do have a great primer on our website covering why you'd want to buy a Burr grinder over something like a blade grinder. It's got a lot of great information in it. We'll definitely link it with this video. So if you're already familiar with Burr grinders and you're just not really sure where to start, let's kind of take a look at the options that we have here and see kind of where you fall in the spectrum. Now right here I have the Hario Mini Mill hand grinder. This is a very small, inexpensive and compact hand grinder. Obviously it doesn't have a motor, so you are going to have to grind manually, which is sort of a trade-off for having a much lower price. Again, this is under $50. This is a $32 grinder. Inside we have some ceramic conical burrs with an adjustment mechanism that's just sort of a screw, and it has these little clicks as you adjust it. So it is technically a stepped grinder, but again, very compact. It breaks apart. It's really easy to take apart to clean. It packs nicely, so if you want to take it on the road with you, it's just really convenient to bring around. It's all made of plastic, so again, a lot of cost-saving features to get you a grinder under $50. So if you're looking for your very first Burr grinder, something, maybe you're not sure if you want to make an investment in a nicer, more expensive model, this is a great place to start. It's not necessarily going to be the most consistent grind in the world, but because of its construction, you're going to get a fairly good grind consistency and certainly much better than a blade grinder. Now moving up, hand grinders are really nice because for the expense, or for the money that you pay for them, you tend to get a higher quality relative to that same price point in an electric grinder. So you're really not going to find a $32 electric grinder that will have the same grind consistency as the Mini Mill here. But looking at something like the Orphan Espresso Lido, this is the Lido 3. This runs $195. Again, another hand grinder. For $195, you can get a pretty decent electric Burr grinder, but the Lido is going to beat it out on a couple of different points. Now, there's some really great features here. The Burr set is conical steel burrs. They are actually double mounted. There's a bearing up here and a bearing down here, so it's a very stable system. That means that you're not going to see a lot of grind variance. The burrs aren't going to get batted around as much when they're actually grinding coffee. We have an anti-static plastic jar, and the grind adjustment here is actually stepless. So there's just these two little screws you can adjust up and down, lock in your setting, and start grinding. Now the Lido 3 has a very aggressive burr cutting pattern, so it's really easy to grind. If you've got like 45 grams and you want to do a whole pot, you'll chew through that in about a minute. It's really easy to grind. It also has this nice little silicone stopper for the hopper, and the handle will pop inward. There's a little button here, you just push it up. Handle pops inward, and it has a carrying case for travel. So again, really great option if you're looking for something to travel with, but this grinder is going to be a phenomenal grinder for just about anybody with any brewing application at home, if you don't mind grinding by hand. And really for the price, you get a lot of value for your dollar there. It's a fantastic grinder all around. So unless you have an aversion to grinding manually, this is a fantastic grinder to pick up. Moving along, we have two grinders by Baratza. Now Baratza is probably one of our best sellers for consumer grinders. They make some really fantastic products across a range of price points and functionalities. So right in front of me, I have kind of the mid-range for them. It's the Baratza Preciso. This is, we'd consider it a full range grinder, so it's capable of doing anywhere from espresso to French press. It has A macro adjustment that you change by turning the hopper. It has 40 distinct clicks, but it also has a micro adjustment. It runs from A to K here, and you can just pop that over, which really allows you to dial things in for something like espresso or even an AeroPress, where you might want a little bit more of a micrometric grind range adjustment. Inside are some steel conical burrs. We have a nice little grind container here. There's also a pulse button and a timer function. So if you want to fill up your hopper, you can just turn the timer on until the hopper is done. Or if you just want a certain amount of coffee, you can hit the pulse button to get the same effect. Now these also come with what Baratza calls a portaholder. It's a plastic container with a metal fork, so you can lock in your portafilter. You can grind right into your portafilter for espresso. That's really handy for you home espresso users. So this is really kind of the lower end of what we would recommend as an espresso grinder. So if you're just getting into espresso at home, you want to take your grinder really seriously, this is about $300, $299. That's the lower end of what we would recommend for getting into espresso, and it's a phenomenal home espresso grinder. Moving on, we have the Baratza Vario W. Now this has some really interesting features. The burr set is actually ceramic. It's flat ceramic burrs. That's going to give you a little bit of a different grind profile as opposed to the steel conical burrs. But really the interesting feature here is the grind by weight. Now, right here I have the grinds bin, and below it I have the load cell. When I put the grinds bin on, you'll notice that it's kind of freestanding. It doesn't touch the sides, it doesn't touch the back, and that's because it rests completely on the load cell, which allows the grinder to grind by weight rather than time, which is a really interesting feature. You don't even really see that in commercial grinders yet. It's almost exclusive to home grinders. So I can go in here and I can pick a setting. So right here I've touched my first setting, it's 15 grams. Second one is 30. These are all presets. You can actually change your weight up or down with these arrows, and then if you want to lock it in, you can just hold the button for 3 seconds. The screen will flash and the setting is saved. Now that's a little bit more of an advanced feature, but it also helps you sort of cut a scale out of your process. So if you're doing a lot of manual brewing and you're really into those brew ratios, really controlling your brewing variables, and you're using a scale for a lot of things, this cuts that out of the process a little bit. So if you have your, let's say you have your server and your brewing cone set up on your scale, you don't have to pull it aside and weigh out your beans to dump in here. You can keep a full hopper, you can set your dose weight, change your grind settings around, and you get the same weight every time. And the Baratza system, the Vario W and the other grinders that use the weight sensing, really, really precise and really accurate, we found. Another nice feature, it actually has a shut-off hopper, so there's this little key on the back where you can open and close the throat of the hopper. So if you want to change out your beans, you can close it, you can just give the hopper a little twist, pop it off, dump out those beans, add some new ones in, lock it back on, and open it up. Really, really easy to do. Now finally moving on, we have the Mazzer Mini E. Now this is really exclusively an espresso grinder. You could use it for drip if you wanted to, but there's a couple of different factors that make it a little more difficult to use, so we really tend to recommend it and see it being used exclusively for espresso. The adjustment is stepless. It has this nice big adjustment wheel up on top, a little handle to help you turn back and forth. It does take a little bit of effort to turn back and forth, so it can be easy to miss a notch or two if you're not careful, but if you keep it well greased, it's usually pretty easy to use. But obviously with the footprint here and its fully commercial build quality, this is meant primarily for espresso and really primarily for commercial use, light commercial given its size. But we do see a lot of home users electing to bring these into their home because you can still fit this under most cabinets, hanging cabinets. You can fit it on a counter and still manage to use it, and it'll give you really great grind consistency for your espresso. It's got 64 millimeter steel flat burrs in here. And this is the electronic version, so you're going to be grinding by time. You have buttons for a single dose, a double dose, and then a manual setting. And these are really easy to change. You can go into the menu and add time or remove time from your doses, set to programs, or again, just hit the manual button and grind by just on the fly. But Really great option. Again, kind of up at the top of the price point here at about $875. But something, you know, if you're really getting into espresso, you've bought a semi-commercial or just higher end semi-automatic espresso machine, and you really want to get into dialing things in and you want a reliable espresso grinder, something like the Mini is a really great choice. Barazzas are fantastic. We love them as home grinder products, but at the same time, they tend to be meant for full range grinding, and they don't necessarily have as much play in the espresso range as something like a Mini would. So because this is meant and geared for espresso, you have a lot of different settings that all fall within that espresso range. Again, you could try and use this as a drip grinder. You'd have to rotate the wheel around a couple times to get into that range, and you wouldn't really be able to go back and forth very easily. It's totally possible. It's going to fall short in the coarse range though, so we wouldn't recommend it as something like a French press grinder. Really, espresso, if that's your game, something like the Mini is really what you want. So that's kind of a look at the range of grinder products that we have at Prima Coffee. There's certainly more options that fill in some gaps here, but this sort of should give you just a glimpse of what you might want to look for when you're considering buying a Burr grinder. So thanks very much for watching.